Hello and welcome to What the Hey, where I'm your regular host of What the Hey, and today in What the Hey, I'm once again answering yet another question. When I go to my notebook of knowledge, I see the question of what the hey is the TUGS TV series? Now this question was asked by Game Geek, so hello to you and thank you very much for the question. Now, in terms of a very basic description, the TUGS television series is a franchise that is very similar to Thomas and Friends, however, it's primarily about boats. It's a little interesting because the main team behind TUGS has a lot of individuals who have participated in similar franchises, but I'll kind of explain that in a little bit. And I'll have a little list there that you can see of the different people behind the creation, direction, as well as the narration behind TUGS. And it's very funny because a lot of the people in this list have actually worked on other series like Thomas and Friends, so you may or may not recognize a few of those names. And I'll kind of explain this later in the video, but I think it's super funny because the similarities in general between TUGS and Thomas and Friends is very prevalent when you consider who actually worked on it. Additionally, another thing that's similar between TUGS and like the Thomas and Friends and the Railway series franchises is the fact that the origin of TUGS is the same, that being from the UK. What's interesting is the fact that the TUGS series, in terms of a production company, created its own for the series, that being TUGS Limited, so it did its own thing for its own show, which is cool. Usually you see any sort of show tagging along with a pre-made production company that's already well known for making stuff, but they made their own, so that's like impressive, at least to me. And then finally, in terms of a network, the original and initial network for TUGS was ITV Network, so I don't know if they have that saved anymore, but in general, that's where it came from. Now it's time to go into the more prevalent and obvious details of the TUGS series, so if you're mainly interested in that, here you go. So overall, the TUGS series is only one season with 13 episodes, each of them running for about 15 minutes. And unfortunately, there is only the one season for the TUGS series, mainly because a second season was kind of announced and discussed, but then it got canceled due to lost franchising, so unfortunately, at least for right now, there's not a second season available. And then when actually discussing the content in the one season of TUGS, the first ever episode was titled Sunshine, and that was released on April 4th of 1989, and the 13th/final episode of TUGS was titled Big Freeze, which was released on June 27th of 1989, so that's for how long it ran. And if you're curious about getting your hands on a copy of the episodes of TUGS, there are multiple VHS releases that were done for TUGS, but not really any DVD, so it's kind of specific. Now for this section of the video, I'm going to kind of present the characters, the setting, and kind of the overall basic plot that the show mainly revolves around. So overall, since we're dealing with boats, the main setting of TUGS would be the big city port because, if you got boats, they gotta go in a port or somewhere that's surrounded by water, so that makes sense. Now, when speaking of the characters within the show, there are quite a few, but they can basically be labeled and narrowed down to the Starfleet and the Z-Stacks. Essentially, you have the Starfleet, which is like the good side, and then the Z-Stacks are the bad, so it's like good versus bad, kind of. But essentially, what the main plot is the fact that you have the Starfleet and the Z-Stacks who take on occasional contracts for work. But essentially what you have is the Starfleet trying to take on various contracts for work, but the Z-Stacks come and interrupt and disrupt those contracts, so it's basically the good versus the bad in trying to get work done. The Z-Stacks are very interesting because in order to know that they're bad, some of them have names that start with Z, which I think is pretty epic. If you're interested in finding other media that relates to TUGS, there are books, games, as well as bed covers, so if you're interested in any of those, there you go. But in terms of my general opinion, I basically have the same appreciation for it that I have for like Thomas and Friends and the Railway series. Of course, as I brought up earlier, a lot of the people who worked on Thomas and Friends and are associated with that helped to produce TUGS, so you can really see that, especially with the character designs. And I kind of get a similar plot and idea overall atmosphere between TUGS and the Railway series / Thomas and Friends. Because in TUGS, you have these main two competing sides, the Z-Stacks and the Starfleet, and then in, like, Thomas and Friends, you have, like, the steam engines and stuff, and then you have the diesel kind of characters in there. And then additionally, comparing TUGS with Thomas and Friends, once again, I'm always weirded out by the weird faces that the characters have, so I also have that similarity between those two. But overall, I think the character for the TUGS television show was very interesting. It's cool to see how different creators have created shows out of objects that normally wouldn't be personified, but they are. But that's essentially the answer to the question. So if you have any questions, let me know and I'll get to working on them as soon as I can. I do have a Wix website where you can see what I'll be answering throughout the rest of the year, so feel free to check that out if you would like to. But that's essentially it. So thank you very much for watching. Bye.